Welcome back to the Bluprint Podcast. It's your boys, Emma Visual and Ray Roots back here again, founders of the Bluprint brand. Today we're joined by a special guest called Abdul. He'll tell you a little bit about himself in a short while, but first we'll just do a little introduction as well, so Abdul also knows a bit about us. I'm a graphic designer, a visual designer, and I've been doing this YouTube thing now together with Ray for the last 3 months. And we've been enjoying it quite a bit, but yeah, my background is pretty much graphic design, and I work in IT, so I'm currently working as a service delivery manager, and I think Ray's working in a pretty similar role, but I'll let him introduce himself to you.
Yeah, so I call myself Ray Roots. That's not my real name. I've mentioned that like a million times on the podcast, just for the sake of anonymity. I kind of like to give myself like an artist name. But I'm a photographer. I've done that for I think 10 to 15 years at this point, ever since I was a kid. And I do videography as well. Really getting into cinematography and directing and writing. And now I'm doing this YouTube thing with Mr. MI Visuals himself. And yeah, I'm in IT as well. I don't have any formal education in arts, if you want to say that. I'm a Scrum Master, so I work in IT. And that's about me.
Okay, so today I think we've got an interesting episode. Normally we bring on people we consider like visual creatives that do similar things to us, but every now and then we have a different kind of person to come on. On episode 3, I think we had a guy called Phil Walkie who travels around the world and gets paid by the NBA to travel around the world and do a whole bunch of different things like host basketball camps and like events for people from different countries and stuff. And then on another episode, we had a psychotherapist on. We asked her a bunch of different questions about therapy in general and also self-doubt and stuff. And we had a few of those kind of guests, and today I bring you on for a different kind of angle. But yeah, you're a linguist and a programmer. Before you really introduce yourself, I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself in 3 different languages, and then me and Ray have to guess what.
Absolutely not, mate.
Yeah, we're doing that.
I like that.
I'm putting you on the spot, bro. Don't worry, our listeners are very good people.
Nah, absolutely. You're putting me on the spot here, bro.
I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't brief him about this, by the way. I just told him I'm going to challenge him today.
I love it.
Okay, so all right.
Any 3 different languages, don't worry. Whoever's most comfortable to you, and me and Ray have to guess.
I mean, I guess it'll be too easy, right? So.
Sorry, but yeah, that's what our podcast is about.
Yeah.
I love this. This is what we do.
I hear it. Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
So I'll go. So I'll go with the first one.
Just a few words. It doesn't have to be long, but yeah.
Okay. So first one. السلام عليكم. مقعي وعبد الرحمن. وحكون ولا هاي مقالة لندن.
Okay, that's too
Somali.
easy. Yeah.
That is Somali. That's too easy. Okay. Okay. So I guess second one. اسمي عبد الرحمن. أنا ساكن في مدينة لندن. وأعمل مع الكمبيوترات. That's my second.
Arabic.
Yeah.
Arabic, yes.
That's Arabic.
Come on, man. Give us something challenging.
Give us a difficult one. You know? Okay. شمي عبدو. لمتي إبريد بيونيفرسيتي. قاعدتي بيروسلايم. Yeah, that's my third one.
I heard Garti and I think, maybe that's French.
It's Hebrew, right?
It's Hebrew.
Wow, do you speak Hebrew?
Yeah, it's Hebrew. So it's it's quite a guttural language. So there's a lot. So Garti means like I lived in. Gar is to live.
Yeah, if I wouldn't have known if I didn't know about you before. I'm pretty sure I've read a few articles from you anyway. But that's Hebrew. It could probably otherwise I would have guessed it as Maltese or something. I don't know because I've been to Malta.
So
Maltese.
Hebrew is quite an interesting one because it's like it does. It's got kind of a guttural quality, but also it's like I consider modern Hebrew to be like a European language, basically. And so Maltese kind of fits that, where it's like, is it Semitic? You know, like, is it like halfway between Europe and the Middle East?
Yeah.
It kind of fits that a little bit.
Yeah, I went to Malta a couple of years back, and boy, I was just walking down the street, and I feel like I'm being attacked. Like I'm hearing, it feels like I'm listening to Italian, Arabic, and Hebrew at the same time. So
Well, I think linguistically, I think it's a Semitic language, right? So I think it's like the closest thing, because people often think of like Maltese as like a type of Italian. It's got a lot of Italian words because of the connections, but
right.
it's actually historically it's probably closer to Tunisian Arabic than it is. And so like if you listen to Maltese as a North African like Arabic speaker, you can pick out a lot of stuff.
Yeah. It's just off the coast of Tunisia, I think. But yeah, Ray and myself obviously both grew up with a couple of different languages. Me being Somali and Bravanese, or Chimini, as my people know it. And Ray, you want to speak a bit about yourself?
Yeah, my background is Turkish Kurdish, and I grew up born and raised in Denmark, and lived a little bit in America as well. So
that's where the accent comes from.
No, I swear I had it before.
Sure.
I wanted to be a rapper. That's why I have it.
And he's not joking about that. But,
no, I'm dead serious.
Today we're going to be talking about linguistics, programming, and creativity, how that all affects creativity as well. So, AP Jama, or Abdul, I've let you talk about yourself in those 3 different languages, but go ahead and speak in English now. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, so now I work as a senior engineer at kind of a fintech where basically like working, like integrating into banks and payment gateways and things like that. But I didn't study computer engineering, computer science or anything like that at uni. I actually studied languages at uni. So initially I started a course doing French and Spanish, and then I ended up like dropping out and then starting again and then finally I ended up doing Arabic and Hebrew at uni. So then I traveled to the Middle East, ended up like spending some time in Jerusalem, in Cairo. Love that. And then came back, and I guess like for a lot of people from a kind of a working class background, you have to constantly like balance like the things that you enjoy with like what's going to pay the bills eventually. And so there was this sort of anxiety in the back of my head, like I got to get a real job, you know, like this isn't a real thing. Because when I was doing languages initially, I was like, maybe I could work at the UN or like some international body, something like that. But then, yeah, so I finished uni. I taught for a couple of years, did some translation stuff. And then I went back to uni, did a master's in linguistics. Again, like fell in love with it. I was just like, this is incredible. I feel like I'm getting a deeper understanding of the languages that I do speak. And then I think when I finished that, I realized that like, again, I'm at the same spot, like what's going to pay the bills. And off the back of that, I think at the time, this must have been like 2016, 2017 times, lots of people were talking about getting into programming and things like that, and like boot camps. So I bought a couple of courses on Udemy and like bought some books and thought, okay, you know what, let me give this a go. I'll give myself a summer. So this is the summer after my master's. And then, yeah, I loved it so much. I was like, I want to do this. Went to a couple of meetups, started applying, and then alhamdulillah, I got my first job. So it's been like a crazy ride since. But it's, yeah, like the pivot I thought was like counterintuitive initially, going from like linguistics into like programming, but actually it's ended up being like the same set of skills.
Yeah,
so that's really helpful.
You know, it's funny, like I work in I've worked in IT for the last 6 years now, but I haven't done any bit of proper coding. I've tried to start several times, but I just haven't found as much of a passion for it as I have in other areas of my life. So which is one of the reasons why I started the Bluprint, because like for me, I've got a 9 to 5 and like it's fairly comfortable, but also it was like I feel like everyone needs to learn some level of programming at some point. Yeah, I just kept on trying and trying, but I just couldn't really get into it. And then I was like, what other thing do I have that I can really make a future out of for myself that I believe in? And that's where it came to like the Bluprint and stuff. So the brand is about like creative education and giving back to what we've learned, and also learning from other masters and experts, and also displaying our skills so we can build our own audience and eventually sell stuff to them. So yeah, you guys listening, we're gonna sell stuff to you very soon. Don't worry. But
Hell yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because I worked as a IT support analyst basically for the first 5 years of my career. I started as an apprentice. And the only bit of coding that I was doing during that whole process was like PowerShell scripting, so which is very basic, like scripting, which is on like the Windows system. So like once you like do a certain bit of it, you can pretty much copy and paste large bits of it for other uses. So it wasn't really coding like that, and I enjoyed like the challenges of it. But yeah, every time I needed to like get something coded, I had to go and speak to a developer. And like right now in my new job as a delivery manager, we've got a whole bunch of developers, and I'm always like sticking stuff onto them to kind of, can we do this, can we do that? And it's just interesting because now I feel like the non-techies speaking to the techies, even though I'm in tech, which is funny. But yeah, man, I'm always like having conversations with developers. We've got another mutual friend, Yusuf, who's I potentially might bring on. But yeah, I just randomly always drop ideas onto them. So I kind of want to know, like, first, how does, like you said, it seemed to be quite a counterintuitive move going from linguistics to programming. But how did you find that, and why was it so easy for you to jump on from one to another? And like the third question, I'm gonna give you 3 questions, and if you don't remember that, I'll prompt you. But yeah, the third question is like, have you thought of coding any like kind of programs to help people who want to enter linguistics or the whole linguistics community?
Yeah. So I think part of the so the reason why it felt counterintuitive, I think that every industry has like gatekeepers, right? People who make up like difficult words or make their industry seem like it's like more difficult to get into than it actually is, or like more complex, that the service that they're giving you, accountants are famous for this, that the service that they're giving you is like infinitely more complex and difficult than, and that's why you should pay them, right? Like I think a lot of industries have these gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers in the computer science world, or at least in tech, is like people who will say you need to have a maths degree, you need to have like a quantitative degree, and you need to be able to like, do like big O notation and like sort bubble and like, do you know what I mean? Like all these kind of like different algorithms and things like that. And that's why I thought when a friend suggested it, I thought like, I can't do this. I'm not necessarily like, I don't have a head for numbers and things like that. But the truth is, like, what I found is, having worked with people who did do computer science degrees, or people who did do maths and like high PhDs and things like that, and people who went from a humanities background, so did history and things like that, I found that often the people who did humanities and social sciences are better programmers. And this is just purely based off the fact that like they've spent a long time honing their ability to communicate, which means that like they're quite good at like talking to stakeholders and like trying to figure out what, like, eke out the things that the requirements for the product, et cetera. And also I think that like there's a certain kind of empathy that's required to like understand an essay question where, write 3,000 words about why the Cultural Revolution failed. And it's like, it takes some kind of introspection and like thinking about that particular question before you come back with an answer. Whereas I think that like, this is just my hot take that no one asked for, but I think that like, in computer sciences and things like that, you're dealing truths, right? You're dealing,
Facts.
right? Yes, like this is so or this is not so. Like does this equal this or not? And I think that kind of creates like a type of radicalism that I think is perhaps not well suited to a kind of a product role, right?
Yeah.
Unless you've got a really good product manager that sits between the developers and
The user base.
exactly the stakeholders,
Yeah.
and who can sort of explain product specifications really well, can like give requirements really well, can I've in the past I found that like people who came from non-quantitative backgrounds to be as good, if not better. The reason why I said, just kind of going to your second question, the reason why I said I thought that it was like a transition that wasn't that bad was because I think when you do, so for a lot of degrees, you have to have, like, for example, if you're doing a humanities or a social science degree, you're probably someone who developed a flair for writing, critiquing, for like structure in an essay from like GCSEs and A level, right? So you probably have like A stars and A's at GCSE and A level history, and then you do history. So you've been, this is not the first time you're doing it, like you've always done it, right?
Throughout education.
Exactly, right? Through your education, you've developed those skills, and now you're just like using them with more sources at a higher level. Whereas I think, and I think the same for maths and physics and a lot of these things, right? The content is different, but the skills that you've acquired are like all of a sudden are basically the same, right? You're just you were doing maths at A level. It was hard. You were doing problem sheets and exercises. You're now doing problem sheets and exercises here. Whereas I think with languages, it's like there's no way of cramming. You have to just like sit down and you just have to like go through the rote memorization of like all the verbs on a page. And there's no way around it. So like you just have to, like, in order to do well at a language A level, you just have to be someone who can just like sit down and just like do a really boring thing and then just like learn an entire page worth of vocab. And it's the same for your degree. And I found that like that skill of, here is almost like an infinite amount of stuff that I need to know, but for now I'm going to focus on just this one page, and I'm going to do it and nothing else for the next 4 hours, is a skill that I developed when I was studying languages at uni. And that meant that like after my master's, when I was self-teaching programming, it was like a skill that I already had. I knew how to make myself sit down and like do the really boring thing, and learn primitives. And so that's why I think the reason why a lot of people struggle to get into tech is not that they're not like clever enough or that they can't do it. I think the real problem is that like maybe they've like depended on quote unquote being clever in the past for other topics like physics and maths or whatever, where it's like, just give me the formula, I know how to apply it. Whereas like with languages and programming, there's no shortcut. You just have to do the boring thing and just sit down and do it.
It's interesting because normally what we do is we start off with more lighthearted stuff and talk about more conceptual kind of things, and then towards the end we end with more like business focused stuff and like technical focused stuff. So it looks like today we've started with that naturally. So I've got another question for you, but first I'll ask you the one about in terms of like creating technology for linguistics, then the community itself. Like, have you thought about that, or have you done anything about that?
Yeah, so I actually did so about 2 years ago, I love linguistics. I went through like this huge corpus of like millions and millions of like Somali texts, and I put them and I essentially like tokenized them, so split them into words, and I put them on like an open source Git repo. For people, like anyone who wants to do anything with like Somali linguistics, they've just got like a data bank of words that they can do stuff with. So that's on my GitHub. recently I've started talking to someone, in fact, like yesterday, of potentially doing some kind of like, this is an area that I know very little about, but I'm kind of learning about now, like machine learning modeling around like the Somali language. So like things like automated translation, like text generation, that kind of stuff. So that will be sort of happening soon, inshallah. And then the main thing that I focus on like most weekends is I run a website called afsomali.co.
Okay.
And it's like it's got it's like a freemium model. You can like there are some like texts on there that you can use to learn Somali, but the idea is to like develop it into something like Anki. I don't know if you've come across Anki.
Like flashcards, basically.
Exactly, flashcards with some kind of notion of like the words that you know the most, and words that you don't know the most, and then reminding you at like 3, 5, or 7 day intervals.
Okay.
So that's something that I'm kind of working on now.
Interesting. Have you ever thought of like, this is very random, but in terms of like the translate features on like Google, for example, and other major brands, have you ever like considered like applying for roles in them kind of places, or? Because I feel like you'd be ideal.
So this is the thing. I mean, I'm kind of two ways about it, right? I think that I think ultimately the thing that I'm sort of interested in, and literally like everyone that I mentor, the thing that I say to them is like you are the product, right? Like I think it's really important to be passionate about a product and to put your heart into it and whatever. But ultimately, like you are the product. You are the thing that you are developing, right? And so you know, do I think that I want to do a kind of a much more focused like linguistics thing at a bigger company? Probably not. And that's only because of what I know about myself, which is that I feel much more comfortable with the kind of the broader strokes and the big picture stuff. And I'm less interested in like the kind of the implementation details, but the kind of the, you know, how do we get this really complex system to do this, like to make this small change? I'm less interested in that. I'm much more interested in like, where will this product fit in the ecosystem? And so because of that, I want to the focus for me next like few years is to develop my people managing skills. So at the moment, like I manage someone at work, and like I do interviewing, things like that. So to develop that, but also to develop like product skills. So you know, how do you build products that like that provide the value that a customer actually needs, as opposed to the vanity project that you think like, if I build, it'll make me feel that I'm a really clever person. I wanna learn like those kind of those skills. So for me, it's like, I want to do big picture stuff and less like implementation details.
Interesting. Okay, so one last question that's more business focused before we go back to the more conceptual stuff. In creative fields, clients can be quite annoying sometimes and very much undervalue the skills you have and the knowledge you've gained over the years. For example, just recently, like I've actually stopped doing commissions because I just want to focus on one thing at the moment, which is the Bluprint and my 9 to 5, and just like having more time for my own hobbies and stuff. But I picked up a client. Just sometimes I just feel like, all right, I'm gonna help them out, but I still want to get paid. So I did the majority of the work for them, and then I got the infamous question: can you make the colors pop a bit? So I got that infamous question the other day, and like for me, I already knew what they wanted, so I made the fix pretty quickly. But it was like it immediately triggered for me that PTSD of like how they value you and how they see it, because I'm doing it at undercut rate, but it's a decent rate, but still undercut like what I would normally expect. And like if you ever freelance or anything like that or create products for anyone, have you found that that's a similar case for like the tech side of things in terms of developing programs and software?
Yeah, so I think I've been I did a lot of sort of I did a lot of teaching and translation, and those things are famously so for example, with the translation stuff, like the challenge was like, how do you manage this person's expectations? They've given you kind of a legal document that they want translated into Arabic or vice versa. And you have 7 days to do it, right? And you're just like, no, mate, that's not possible. And with the language teaching side, I have actually found that like the people who were trying to lowball me were often like other Somalis.
Of course.
And I think they were, like, in their mind it was like they would have been happier to pay the upper fee for someone who wasn't Somali, who was teaching Arabic, but because I was Somali, they thought that like my skills were somehow less impressive, or my degree was like less impressive or something like that. And I think for things like that, like the approach that I've taken, there's this book called Oversubscribed. I don't know if you've come across it.
Never heard of it. I'm gonna take a note down.
It's really interesting. It's by this guy called Daniel Priestley, and he basically just says like, look, like if you're a freelancer, if you're someone who is who works for themselves, self-employed, and you've got a kind of an hourly rate or a daily rate, he was like probably double it or like triple it. And his reasoning for that, which actually makes sense, is that he says that like there's a kind of a premium to having higher prices because people are like, this guy's expensive, therefore he must be good, which means that they put respect on your name from like the first day, right? If you're paying someone £1,000 to do a thing, compared to someone that you're paying £5,000 to do the exact same thing, you're not going to bother the £5,000 guy at 11:30 in the morning, at night, telling him, the colors don't pop, right? You're gonna be like, nah, this guy's a serious individual. I'm not gonna waste his time. Whereas like if the project costs £100, then it's like it creates this, it kind of devalues what you're sort of providing. And then the other argument that he makes, which I think is really interesting, is that like if you have a higher rate, there is less pressure on you to get more clients. And I think like notoriously that's the really difficult thing to do. If you're like a freelancer, it's like, how do I get my name out there, one, but also how do I get a decent amount of people coming through my door every month? To pay my bills next month. I remember this used to happen to me a lot when I was teaching. I'd be like, I need to do, so my rent is like $650. My rate is like £30 an hour. I need to get this many in a month to be able to afford rent and to be able to afford this, right? And it was only, and it was almost like a losing battle because I'd have to like put like loads of ads like in Gumtree or whatever, because this was like my primary way of making money. But it was only like when I signed up for like some kind of higher end tutoring agencies, where I was like, actually my hourly rate is 65. Yeah. That it meant that like I needed to get half the clients of what I needed to get a month ago. And so that, and also like, bear in mind, I'm working less, right? Because instead of having to teach 30 hours in a week, I'm having to teach 15 hours in a week or 10 hours in a week. So yeah, I found that like, obviously you need to have like the skills to be able to like price yourself up. But I found that like, once you feel confident in your ability to deliver the goods, to just be like, no nonsense, I'm gonna double my price. This is who I am now. And I think once you start to get to that level, that's when like the nonsense amateurs start asking for your services. Yeah. And like big companies become like your prime. And the other thing is, like, by the way, like, big companies will come back. So I had this one law firm, I did translation for them, and then they would hit me up like once every couple of months, and they'd be like, what about this, what about this, what about this? Whereas, like, if I had done translation, I did a translation for a guy who was moving to Dubai once, and it was a one-time job. Whereas, like, with companies, it's like a long-term thing. And literally it become like, you become the person that the office manager or whatever, like, reaches out to whenever they need a thing. So I think pricing up would be my suggestion.
Interesting. All right, so I'll wrap it up there in terms of business questions. A lot of insight there to be had, and we're going to go back to more of conceptual things like linguistics and how that affects creativity, or learning languages affects creativity. And I'm going to ask for Ray, because he's been quiet for a while. What is unmute yourself? What is a linguist? What is a linguist to you? And also, what's your experience been like growing up as a Turkish girl in Denmark, and like your language learning? How do you feel like that affected you growing up?
I think, well, to answer your first question, a linguist, I've always thought of that as someone who just speaks a lot of different languages. And I'm still not sure if that's the case or not.
So what do you think about that, Abdul?
Yeah, but I mean, he does speak a lot of different languages.
Yeah,
right. He introduced himself in 3. He's speaking to us in a 4th.
It depends on who you ask, right? It depends on who you ask. I think you're right. I think some people definitely do say that. I think for other people, it's like someone who doesn't necessarily speak a lot of languages, but just focuses on the study of language. Is the other
definition.
Common definition.
All right. Cool.
In terms of the other question, I think language is such a huge part of your identity, especially if it's like a language that you grow up with. But I was never really good at my mother tongue. Like I don't speak Kurdish. I know a few words. I speak like broken Turkish, and I grew up in Denmark. And I would say that the two languages that I speak the best is Danish and English. I might even say English I speak that even better than Danish.
Really?
I would say that, yeah. But I've always felt like I was a part of a subculture within my culture, because I'm in a subculture because I am able to communicate in a different language than the majority is able to. And I also feel that I'm in a subculture within the subculture because I don't speak it well enough to feel like I'm a part of it completely. So for many years, I would just distance myself from the community and just not associate myself with them until I got older and I realized, you know what, like I know language is a part of your identity and culture, but it's not everything. And I can certainly take part in it and be proud of my heritage and like understand where I'm from and appreciate that without being fluent in every single language. I have an interesting history with languages. I can't seem to learn them.
Why
it doesn't matter. I don't know. Maybe it's the approach that the teachers have taken, or it's me. I don't understand grammar. I speak English, I speak Danish, I speak Turkish. I don't understand any grammar in any of the languages that I speak. It's just, I've just picked it up. I've noticed the patterns that people speak in. I've noticed that I don't, like, there's a certain way you don't speak and there's a certain way you speak. And I just kind of adjust my language to according to what I'm hearing. I don't understand the rules. So I had German classes in school, and I never understood German. Like I got to like a baby level almost, but like I never got past grammar. I still don't understand grammar today. I did Arabic for a while. I still don't understand the grammar.
That's interesting.
I was just gonna say, like, just sort of I think two really interesting points. What I was actually thinking, Ray, was like, you know, with regards to that sort of taking part of like the culture thing, you know, this is a conversation that we that like quite a lot of young Somali people have been sort of talking about. You know, it's like, you know, this I think there is this, particularly with the diaspora, we've got this anxiety about this authenticity, right? Like, are we Somali enough, right?
Right.
And this, do we belong, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like, languages often play a kind of a central role in, like, nationalism.
Right.
And it's about a way of saying, like, who's inside the club and who's outside the club, right? So like Chinwini, for example, is a really good example.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's a language that's spoken in Somalia, but people often don't describe it as a Somali language.
That's my mother tongue, by the way. So
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, right? Like, it's really interesting, because it's like, well, actually, like, what does it mean for something to be the national language of a country?
Mm-hmm.
And is it like a pretty arbitrary thing where it's just like, this group, the language that they speak is the real Somali, and then this group, the language they speak is like kind of a not real, or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that I think that's interesting, because I think for us, the diaspora,
Mm-hmm.
wherever we come from, I think we just have to let go of this idea of authenticity,
Yeah.
right? And just take part, just get involved. Like, we just, do you know what I mean? Like, because if we're thinking, yo, do I really belong? Like, am I Turkish? Am I really Kurdish? Like, am I Somali? Like, and like, our kids get here,
Mm-hmm.
bro, they're gonna be even more confused than us, right?
I'm definitely there.
They're gonna be even more confused than us.
I'll give you a bit of background about myself. So my mum's parents and my dad's dad are both consider themselves Burmese people, or Chimini people who speak Chimini. But my dad's mum, she's fully Somali. And so I've grown up in, like, when I was younger, I grew up more on my mum's side, so I was speaking more Chimini. And then when I grew up, like later on in my years, my grandmother, with my dad's mother, started living with us, and she only speaks Somali. And my dad doesn't either. My dad doesn't speak Chimini either, so I started speaking Somali more. So I've got me and my siblings have a huge like identity crisis, like, going on all the time, because, like, we've got cousins on both sides who identify as one or the other. We're, like, really unsure, and, like, I'm just imagining, like, my kids and their kids, and, like, it's crazy, because it affects the way you grow up. It affects the way you're perceived by other people. It's crazy, because like, now I've just accepted it.
I think this, honestly, like, it's fascinating. Like, there's a really maybe you guys have, like, a show notes thing, or whatever. Like, maybe I could put the link in there for anyone who wants to watch it. But there's a really interesting talk by this academic who says, like, what did she say? She says, like, is there Jewish English in America? And because you've got this idea of, like, Ladino, which is, like, kind of the Jewish diaspora of, like, people of Jews who got kicked out of Spain in 1492 and went to Turkey. So there's a big community that speaks this language called Ladino in Turkey, and, like, in the Balkans and Greece, and it's Spanish, but it's got, like, Hebrew words in it, right? And so like, this academic, she found, like, in America, if you're, like, a Jewish guy in New York, you speak a specific type of English that has, like, certain Yiddish words in it. And if you're in LA, you speak a certain type of
it's like a sub language, basically.
Exactly, that has, like, different Yiddish words in it. And so what ends up happening is, like, exactly what we do now, right? Where, like, I think what's probably going to happen in, like, 50 years' time is that there'll be, like, Somali English, right? In the way that we code switch, right? So we'll say, like, hoyo, right? So I think that's probably what's gonna happen, and that's gonna then become, like, the language of the Somalis in the UK. And I think in Denmark it'll be, like, Danish with some Somali words, right? And probably for the Kurdish community it'll be, and I think, like, maybe by the time we get there, we'll be less. We'll still be teaching Somali in, like, Saturday schools and stuff, but I think that we'll feel less like a fraud if we don't speak the mother tongue.
we have that we have that in Denmark already. Like we have that like not Danish but Danish. But it's not divided into communities of nationalities. It's you have Danish that Danish people speak, and then you have Danish that children of immigrants speak. And so it'll be a mixture of Danish, and then you have Turkish words, you have Arabic words, you have Somali words, and everyone understands it. Like everyone who's an immigrant or a child of an immigrant, they understand it.
That's really weird, man.
But a Dane who isn't like someone who's like young around our age, they understand that it probably means something like this. But there used to be a time on Facebook like 10 years ago where they make like I wouldn't say make because it's not an actual dictionary, but they make like lists of translations of what the words that we would say would mean in Danish. So we already have that in where we like if you're in Copenhagen, we speak a certain way, but if you travel outside of Copenhagen, where there aren't many people like people from the Middle East or people from Africa or from Asia, like you don't if there are less of those people, you don't hear that type of language.
So I guess that sounds like I think they call it like metropolitan London. Yeah. So there's a specific word for it where like words like wagwan, what you're saying, like these. I think it's called MLE. Which is like multicultural London English. That was it. It's that sounds a lot like that, which is fascinating that you've got it in Denmark as well.
It's interesting, Ray. I'm developing a theory about you. I feel like you're quite adaptable and astute, and that's why you're maybe you're not good at picking up languages, but you're good at doing impressions.
Yeah.
So that was going to be my second point actually. So language learning. Why are you so bad at it? I don't think you are. I think schools are really bad at it. I think schools are really bad at it, and I think that schools in the last like 3-4 years have clocked on to the fact that they're really bad at it. And have started to change the way that like they teach languages. So, I imagine like when you're at school, just like when I was at school, it was like textbooks, right? So here's a textbook. We're gonna learn the verb être in French, and we're gonna just like either repeat after me or like we're gonna teach you school uniform words, right? And that's a good lesson done. I think what started to happen recently is they started to implement like more like storytelling type things. So where like the teacher would show the students a picture of a child playing football or something, and then they'd be like, "Ray, what do you think this is?" And the idea is that like you don't correct the child's grammar, but the feedback that you give them is the correct grammar. So like you might say something like the girl playing football, and then the teacher will be like, yes, she is playing football. And so the idea is that like, because this is how children learn, right? Like children learn from kind of like feedback that they get from the parents in a controlled context, right? It's like we're eating something. That's the context that we're dealing with right now, and the children can express themselves any way they want. But the parent gives them the correct version without correcting them. And so they found that like if you correct a child, which is all that my school did, they develop like emotional attachment to the correction rather than to the right word. So like they remember they got the word wrong. Next time the word comes up, oh, I couldn't remember it last time. That's what they remember. That's emotionally what they've remembered rather than remembering the actual right thing, right? So I think schools are getting better, but it is something that like the Western world is like terrible at, like teaching languages.
Since we're on the topic, go ahead, Ray. Then.
Yeah, I'll tell you about my German classes and my experiences there. Like I have family in Germany. I have family in Austria. I have one family member from Austria who moved to Denmark. So I always thought like if I need help, I can always just like I could reach out. And I like obviously as a kid, I don't realize that they have families of their own and they have work, and so it's not as easy. And back then it was expensive to call abroad. Damn, I remember that.
Yeah.
But German class to me was such a bad experience because the teacher was so horrible, so bad at teaching, and so mean. Like if you think of like German engineering like a machine, like that's just the way that she was. And I remember I was this is horrible, and I regret like feeling this way, but I just hoping that she would fall down the stairs or something because I hated that woman so
Wow.
much.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
she did end up getting sick. She didn't quite fall down the stairs, but she did get sick, and we got a new teacher who's better. But it was still like it was still the same thing. I don't remember any rules of grammar. I just remember I got 90% of it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the thing, right? Like your grammar shouldn't really matter, right? Like you don't say to a child, "No, you are wrong." Like that's not how feedback works with children, right?
Right.
If they think the past tense of bring is bringed, then you'll just give them the right thing back, right? So you'll be like, so you brought something, right? Like you often like correct in a way that. But I think that particularly as teenagers, which is when most of the people learn languages, you're incredibly self-conscious, and the way that you're perceived by your classmates is the most important thing in the world, right? Like that's when you start to like girls, and like you feel a little bit ashamed of your parents because like you think they're not cool or hip or whatever, and you think everyone is watching you all the time.
Right.
Most of us remember that as teenagers, right? You think that like if I'm walking into a bus, I think that like every single eye is on me, right? It's a movie, right? So if you tell someone who's emotionally there, if you tell them no, you're wrong in front of like their friends, they're not going to try again.
Right.
And I think I think teachers need to do a better job of like emotionally managing the situation.
I've always wondered because there's a guy who he doesn't do it a lot anymore, but he used to do like heavy marketing, like a lot of marketing on Instagram about teaching Arabic, and I signed up for his class, and his approach was just so much more different. I never got very far in the class because that's another story. I got burnt out from all the things that I was doing, but his approach was, we're going to teach you Arabic in a year. But we're going to focus on you just learning as many words as possible and using those words. And I don't care about grammar first. So we're just gonna memorize a bunch of words, and then twice a week we're gonna talk and use those words.
Yeah.
And then towards the end we can teach you grammar. And that was just super appealing to me because it made so much sense.
Yeah.
Like I can say certain things in German.
Yeah.
But the grammar is wrong. But I'm limited in what I can say. But if the approach was as his approach is, I would have been able to say so many things. At least I would have been able to communicate. I would have spoken like a child, but at least I would have been able to communicate in Germany.
So I think there's a linguist called Michel Thomas who kind of passed away like 10 years ago, and he had like a fascinating story. He was like a Polish guy who lived in France and spoke loads of languages, got involved in the French resistance during World War II, got caught, got tortured, just like an interesting guy. And then after World War II, he was like, I'm going to teach everyone languages. And his approach was, he says just imagine you're playing tennis, right? He says the problem is that a lot of people think that in order to be good at tennis, in order to learn their language, they want to score every point, right? And he goes, no, when you're learning a language, what you want to do, just like tennis, is you want to get the ball over the net. That's right. That's you. That's level one. Don't do anything but that. Just get the ball over the net. So if you have 3 words, me hungry now, right? That's done the job. It's gotten the ball over the net. The other person understood. The native speaker can do the heavy lifting and understand that you're hungry, right?
Right.
And so in his approach, what he does is in fact, I'd say check out his French and his Spanish collections. Is that he sits down with a student and he starts with a really simple sentence. So he'll be I work is this, right? So je travaille, I work, and then he'll be like, in is probably like à or on or dans, and then he'll be like, okay, so how do you think you say bus? And then he'll be like, and then you'll be like, bus, is it bus? And you'll be like, yeah. And then he'll be like, okay, so now say I work in a bus. Now say I work in a house. House is maison. Now say house in a house. And so the idea is that like so you build this like very, very slowly, this understanding of like how to make a kind of an infinite amount of sentences using like a finite amount of pre-structured sentences.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that his approach is the one that I used when I was teaching, and it was like, I don't care about the grammar. I want you to just be able to say things and get things over the net.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm hyped. I want to learn new languages now.
Glad to have convinced you.
All right, so we're running out of time, and I kind of talk about how learning languages and stuff affects creativity. But before we go there, I'm gonna put you on one last spot, Abdul. So I'm gonna give you 1 minute, and I want you to just talk about what you think is the best way to practice learning language. Although you just talked about it quite a bit there, but just give a start to finish for a total beginner. Well, not finish, but to conversational level, let's say. 1 minute, starting now.
Okay, so if I was learning a new language right now, the first thing that I would do is I would go on the internet. I would look at official certification. So there's a European framework for language certification, like A1 to C2, and I would find out if they have levels for my language. And then the second thing that I would do is I would spend some time before I've even actively started learning it, listening to radio in that language, just to kind of see if I can develop a kind of an ear for it. Third thing that I would do is I would make a timetable. Initially, I'd start out 2 hours a week, and then 1 hour of just like independent study from a textbook or something like that corresponds to your level. And then the second hour, I would go on a website called Italki, which is like incredible. You find teachers from around the world who speak your languages, and it's like quite cheap. So like my Spanish tutor is like, I think it's like £8 an hour or something, £9 an hour. And then I would get on a call with them, and I would just like try and say some things that I've learned. So 1 hour independent learning, 1 hour with this other person. And then I would just keep it at that for like 3-4 months until I felt like I wanted to do more. If I don't want to do more, I stop. If I'm not interested in the language anymore, I stop. And then if you think you're interested more, then I would just like change my timetable to have to do more speaking and less independent study. That would be my approach.
Okay, that was about 1 minute 45. I'll give it to you. Still a good job there. All right, so last question for both of you guys before we go, before we wrap up a bit. How many countries have you guys been to? I'll start with myself. I've been to Turkey, Malaysia, Malta. I was born in Kenya, and England, Holland, Belgium. I think that's it. So yeah. What about you guys?
Do you want to go first, or should I?
Yeah, I think you should go first. I'm still kind of thinking.
All right. Do you want to count? Because I can't count. Then I can't count and speak at the same time. I don't know how to multitask.
I'm gonna count. Go ahead.
Does islands of a country count as visiting the country?
I guess, yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Let's start from the top. Norway, Sweden, Germany, Belgium, Austria, the UK, Spain, Greece, Turkey, the UAE, America. Oh, well, the United States of America, and Canada. And is that it? I think that's it.
I counted 12 there. Remind me, I went to Barcelona as well, so I think I went to Spain as well. But you're 12. How about you, Abdul?
I think about 25. I was just,
Damn! Whoa!
I think.
Damn!
I think,
Okay.
I think so. A lot of those are in Europe.
Yeah.
A lot of those in Europe, and then I traveled to the Middle East. So on my gap year, I traveled to quite a lot of the Middle East. So Lebanon, Turkey, Palestine, Israel, Jordan, and then I guess like the Gulfi countries. I've never been to Kuwait, but I've been to the others. Oh, I've never been to Bahrain as well. Yemen, Oman, and then Somalia, of course. And then, so it's mostly Europe and the Middle East. In Asia, I've only ever been to, as in like Far East Asia, I've only ever been to Thailand. And then that side of the Atlantic, Brazil and Cuba.
Interesting.
Damn. What was your favorite? Question for you both. Favorite place, favorite country to visit?
Easily Malaysia for me. Easily.
I really want to go to Malaysia, man. Malaysia.
Me too.
No questions asked.
Me too.
Really good. Okay, so this one, I've got mixed feelings about this. I want to say Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why I have mixed feelings is like the food was terrible. Like
I'm not going there now.
it was, bro. Like wallahi, when I tell you, like steak cola was the best thing about that country. Like in terms of food, right? Like it was just so bad. But the people were like so nice. The people were so nice. And yeah, it was like a really good vibe. So you met people and you would just like hang out with them for like the whole day. We visited we ended up going to this really nice mosque, and like made some like really good friends. Basically, there's a lot of like African diaspora who is like studying in Havana. So we just made loads of friends and we're just like hanging out with these guys. Brazil and Cuba, I think, are definitely like two of my favorite places.
What kind of food do they serve in Cuba?
So it's like
you give me the impression that they serve like beans,
exactly.
Beans made in many different ways.
So it's like that kind of like generic like Caribbean thing minus the taste. So it's basically like rice and beans is like the kind of the I guess like what a lot of people eat, but also like if you think like obviously like if you're looking for like halal food and there isn't that many, then you have to limit yourself to vegetarian stuff, right? So you have to like and for vegetarian, I didn't realize it, but like I heavily lean on like cheese and things like that when I'm ordering vegetarian stuff, and so it's like cheese not very good, and then I think like what
about the seafood?
So there was seafood. Eventually we found like a place that was quite close to the beach that had like incredible seafood. But the thing is, bro, like Cuba is a bit weird because there are no high streets. Right, there are no shops, there are no businesses. Like, I mean, there are businesses, but it's like it's someone's living room, right? And so because of that, you don't have this sort of, unless you're in the kind of the touristy part of like Havana Vieja, which is like the old part of the city. Everywhere else was just like, come into my shed, I'll make you a meal. And it's not like I don't know what you got in your shed, you know. Like I don't know if it's going to be a good one or a bad one. But, so maybe like I'm slagging off the whole country, but actually it was just like you just
went to the wrong sheds.
Exactly, we went to the wrong shed. Maybe that was the problem.
I need to get someone on who's from Cuba now to contradict shit.
Gotta tell us which shed. Shack is the best. I think my favorite was Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice.
All right, I'll ask you why another episode.
I mean, I just like the people. I'll keep it short. I just like the people there. It was a good experience.
Nice.
Similar for me in Malaysia. The people are good. The food is amazing. and the vibe, the atmosphere, the environment is just perfect. But how do you guys feel like those experiences have influenced the way you think and your creativity? And do you feel like learning languages affect creativity and being able to solve problems in different ways a lot easier? Or what do you guys think? I'll let Ray speak.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was a 2-part question, right?
There's always 2-part questions with me, man.
It's never easy with this guy.
Never.
I think the experiences that I had when I traveled, when I went to Canada, I did take a lot of pictures, and I did link up with a lot of creatives, other photographers, a creative director, a clothing designer, barbers who were going to shows and win awards and stuff like that. So I connected with a lot of those people, and when I got back home, I just wanted to create that community myself here, because we don't have that type of community where every type of creative, they just link up and make like art together. It's usually like a photographer does his or her own thing,
Very siloed.
and
Very siloed, like kind of like the tech world kind of.
yeah, it's just like you do you, and if we need you, we'll pay for you, but we don't necessarily need to hang out unless we already know each other. And I just wanted to create that environment here myself. I don't think I succeeded in that, but I did. I think I sparked the creative energy in a few people around me, and I see those people are still doing creative stuff like today, and it's been 4 years almost since I went there.
And that's why it's called Ray Roots.
Yeah, I'd be planting seeds, and
Very good.
creativity grows from the roots.
Honestly, I think for me, so there've been a couple of times where like I traveled with friends and stuff, like holidays, but the majority of the time, especially like me doing like prolonged travel, was like on my own. And I really enjoy that. I really enjoy like traveling on my own, and I think that it gives me an opportunity to just be on my own and to doodle on my anytime that I've got like new ideas or things like that. I can have like time with myself, and I can just put stuff on in my like every year I have like this one big diary that I put like all my random thoughts into. I don't put like things that have happened during the day, but I put like ideas and things like that into it. And I was recently looking into when I went to Syria. So I went to Syria in 2009 for my gap year, and I was literally like maybe last week looking at the diary from that year, and it's got like postcards and things like that from like Turkey and Syria and Lebanon and places like that, but also like it's got like in it like small notes about the things that I've been reading and the way that I felt about them, and what they inspired me. And so like short film ideas and short like story ideas and things like that. And yeah, so do I think that travel sparks creativity? Yeah, probably, because you've got like different inputs than your usual input. So I guess like the output, if you kind of think of the human brain as like some kind of computational device, then I'm assuming that like having different inputs will kind of cause for slightly different outputs. And I think that I think the other thing that it's provided me with, not necessarily creativity, but this sense that this sense that I've lived. I think traveling can make you feel like you've had vastly different experiences, and that like it kind of centers you a little bit and makes you feel like, you know what, man, like I remember being there and being stuck and running out of money or whatever. Like, I don't know, it kind of just focuses things a little bit more. I really appreciate.
All right, so before I wrap up, I'll just give my take. I think it's very important to travel and learn new languages, mainly for the personal development side of things, because I feel like a lot of creatives, they like there's a lot. I feel like there's more self-taught artists ever than there's ever been out there right now. and creatives as well. And like I feel like they usually come from a place where they've been doing it for years and they've been just practicing by themselves for years, and they don't really have like the personal skills to develop like their business minds as well. And I feel like when you travel, when you experience different things, you learn how to talk to people in different ways. You learn to appreciate different ways of thinking as well, and also different people and the way they approach you and how they think. You can kind of judge it from a very quick perspective. I feel like you can be a quicker judge of people and the way they behave, and you can and then act appropriately after. So I feel like from a personal development kind of thing, it's hugely important. So I'm definitely looking to learn more languages and travel to more places in the future as well myself. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The last thing I wanted to mention was I want to give you a little tribute to, I'm sure both of you guys know Lao Shu from YouTube, Lao Shu 505,000. Also know, his real name is Moses McCormick. He's like a hugely popular, well, he was a hugely popular YouTuber who like advocated for languages, and he was a polyglot who knew like, I don't know, 30 plus languages or something ridiculous like that. So I think he knew like 10 like fluently or something. And yeah, he passed away I think this month or early this month or something, and that's like a huge loss to the community, because I know a lot of people that have watched his videos, like especially like things where he's speaking to Somali people randomly and pops up on them, and it's quite humorous, and it seems like the same way with all the other different cultures and languages he's experienced and interacts with. So I just wanted to give you a little shout out to him. Go support his stuff still, because I'm sure his family will probably benefit from it in the future, even though he's passed away. So yeah, it's a big loss to the community, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So yeah, Abdul, is there any resources that you wanna like mention before you leave, like language learning program?
So I was just gonna say that oversubscribed book I would like highly recommend for anyone who's like working on their own, like working for themselves. It's like pricing up to kind of get rid of a lot of the headaches. So yeah, that's something that I would definitely recommend. Another thing that I would definitely recommend is Italki, is a website that I mentioned for finding teachers that will.
How do you spell that? iTalk.
So I and then talk and then I.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a website that I definitely recommend if you want to learn languages and you think you've got some kind of like money, then I would say like definitely go on Italki. Yeah, I think those are the two sort of big takeaways from my side.
Cool. Where can people find you if you want them to find you?
Yeah. So yeah, on Twitter.
Not in a shack in Cuba, eh?
Yeah. Not in Cuba, definitely. I was actually thinking about like going back there, man. Like, because I wrote this like snarky blog piece about it when I came back from Cuba. I think I'm gonna reread it to like remind myself of what it was like, because I've forgotten now. But yeah, on Twitter, AP Jama. So that's my Twitter, and yeah, that's
cool. I'll stick it in the description. All right, so yeah, that's been your boys from the Bluprint and my visuals and Ray Roots, joined by Abdul AP Jama. We talked about linguistics, programming, and how that all affects creativity. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you in the next one.